Okay, so this section of the chapter is called The Stages of Listening, More Than Meets the Ear. And the first thing that the section talks about is the HURIER model. And that's the definition right here. A model of listening focusing on 6 skill areas or stages. So the first stage of the model is the hearing stage. During this stage of listening, you're going to be paying attention to all the sounds that you hear around you, whether it's different conversations that are going on in a room, or maybe you're outside and you hear traffic or birds. It's all the sounds that come in to your hearing senses, and that's the hearing stage. So the next section is the understanding stage. During this stage, we're basically making sure that our brain is understanding or comprehending what's being said to us. There's a couple of things that interfere with this understanding. There's what's called red flag words, and everybody's red flag words are different, but it's whatever kind of triggers a response in you where you think that I already know, or this is like a dangerous subject. Our text tells us that such red flag words can be AIDS or income taxes. They kind of cause a person to shut down their listening. Other factors include environmental factors. Is it too noisy? Is the person talking too fast or too slow? Another factor is this called the speech-thought differential. And this theory is that we speak at a much slower rate, usually 125 to 150 words per minute, whereas our brain can comprehend up to 500 words per minute. So it's probably what causes some people to zone out while you're talking. So the next stage is the remembering stage. This is where we assign a place in our brain to remember what we've heard. Some things that help us remember are repetition, so repeating an idea or a thought or a phrase. Another way to remember is paraphrasing. So if you hear something, repeating it back in a slightly different manner to the person. Also visualization, so just internally thinking of an image to help you remember what you've heard. So the next stage is the interpreting stage. During this stage, it's our brain's intention to understand what is being said to us. And the most difficult part about this is not assigning our own meaning to it, but making sure that we're getting the meaning that the speaker is intending. The next stage is the evaluating stage. During this time, our mind is running through the information that we've received and deciding, does this make sense? Is this something that could be true? It's during this stage that we separate what we know to be false in a speaker's message and what we know to be true or possible. The last stage is the responding stage. During this stage, we're offering feedback to the speaker to let them know whether their message has been received and whether it's been received in a positive or negative manner. So this is the HURIER model. And again, it's a model of listening focusing on these 6 skill areas or stages. Okay, so now I want to talk about listening behaviors. There's ways to listen efficiently and ways to listen inefficiently. Over here on the board, these are some inefficient ways to listen, and you're probably familiar with some of these type of listeners. So let's talk about fraudulent listening. These are the people who are maybe nodding and when they're not really listening, their mind's someplace else. Another type of ineffectual listening is monopolistic listeners. These are the people who will interrupt you when you start to say something. For instance, if I started to tell a story about being on vacation, a monopolistic listener might listen to the first sentence and then jump in with their own type of story about vacations. The next type, completers. These are people who, again, aren't really listening. They just want to fill in what they think you're going to say. So the final part of my section is talking about feedback. And feedback is the way we respond to the speaker and let them know whether we've heard what they've said and whether or not we agree with what they've said. One type of feedback is evaluative feedback. That's a positive or negative judgment on what has been said. And the way you can express positively is, of course, to say, oh, I agree with what you've said. You make a good point. Negatively would be to disagree or to argue another point to let the speaker know that you have heard what they've said but don't agree with it. This concludes my section of Chapter 6, The Stages of Listening, More Than Meets the